Good morning, sixth grade. Last week we looked at ionic bonds and then just atoms in general. So our first lesson for this week is going to be on covalent bonds. So first let's look at our little story from the My Planet diary. So it's called Sticky Feet. Have you ever seen a gecko climbing up a wall or running across the ceiling? Geckos seem to defy gravity. They have tiny hairs that cover the pads of their feet. These hairs branch out into hundreds of smaller structures called spatulae. When a gecko climbs a wall, billions of spatulae on its feet come into contact with the surface. Scientists believe that geckos can stick to surfaces because of the billions of small attractive forces called van der Waals forces between the molecules of the spatulae and the molecules on the surface. Now, scientists are developing adhesives that can copy the characteristics of the spatulae. Okay, just a little fun thing there about geckos. So our questions for today's lesson: how are atoms held together in a covalent bond? What are properties of molecular compounds? I don't know why I always struggle with that word. And then how do bonded atoms become partially changed? So let me move my bubble over a little more. So first definition we have is covalent bond, which is the chemical bond formed when two atoms share electrons. Covalent bonds are usually formed between non-metal atoms, and ionic bonds usually form when a metal combines with a non-metal, just for comparison there. So the attractions between the shared electrons and the protons in the nucleus of each atom hold the atoms together in a covalent bond. That's the answer to our first key question there. A molecule is a neutral group of atoms joined by covalent bonds. Atoms form molecules that range in size from 2 to thousands of atoms. So then we have a double bond and a triple bond. So a double bond is going to be when atoms share 2 pairs of electrons, and a triple bond is when they share 3 pairs of electrons. A molecular compound is a compound made up of molecules. The molecules of a molecular compound contain atoms that are covalently bonded. Struggling to say words today. So there we can see that connection. Ionic compounds, again going back to last time, are made up of ions, and they do not form molecules. And that kind of goes into the answer to our second key question. Unlike ionic compounds, molecular compounds usually do not conduct electric current when melted or dissolved in water. Also, compared to ionic compounds, molecular compounds generally have lower melting points and boiling points. So, molecular compounds have lower melting and boiling points. Ionic compounds are the ones that can conduct electric current when melted or dissolved in water. So just keeping that up there again. So properties of molecular compounds is that they have poor conductivity, that first sentence, and that they have low melting and boiling points. So a lot of times electrical wires will be insulated with rubber or plastic, and that is part of the molecular compound that then allows for poor conductivity. And then pure water does not conduct electric current, neither does table sugar when it is melted or dissolved in pure water. So just a few more things to go off of that there for you. Answer to our last question. Unequal sharing of electrons causes covalently bonded atoms to have slight electric charges. So we have nonpolar and polar bonds. A nonpolar bond is a covalent bond in which electrons are shared equally. A polar bond, they are not shared equally. So when electrons are shared unequally, the atom with the stronger pull gains a slightly negative charge, and the atom with the weaker pull gains a slightly positive charge. A molecule is polar if it has a positively charged end and a negatively charged end, so it needs to have both. And then not every molecule that has polar bonds is polar. If the attractions cancel out, the molecule is nonpolar. So just something to think about. They're not automatically polar. Opposite charges attract. Polar molecules are attracted to each other by weak attractions between their slight negative and positive charges. Properties of polar and nonpolar compounds are different because of differences in attractions between their molecules. So here we have melting point and boiling point of water are higher than the melting point and boiling point of oxygen. And the attractions between the polar water molecules require more energy to overcome than the attractions between the nonpolar oxygen molecules. We have our vocabulary words. Covalent bond is the chemical bond formed when two atoms share electrons. A molecule is a neutral group of atoms joined by covalent bonds. A double bond is when atoms share two pairs of electrons. A triple bond is when they share three pairs. A molecular compound is a compound that is made up of molecules. A nonpolar bond is a covalent bond in which electrons are shared equally, and a polar bond is a covalent bond in which electrons are not shared equally. And your assignment is going to be completing the questions on Edmodo for this lesson. As always, if you have questions, let me know.